Psychologists, which is the board that regulates the practice of psychology in Ontario and hypothetically protects the public interest, has levied a series of what are, in essence, lawsuits against me for unprofessional conduct pertaining primarily to my social media communication. And so they have decided in their wisdom that I am to be required to undertake a series of re-education lessons designed to ensure that I communicate in a manner they deem appropriate. And I have told them that there are no circumstances I can imagine under which I would be willing to do that. And the next step is to bring me before a public disciplinary hearing and then to suspend my clinical license. And so I'm making all of this public because I think people need to weigh in on whether I'm an alt-right, Nazi, harmful, bastion of intolerable political thought with a troll-like army of pathological followers, or whether the college itself is a corrupt nest of social justice vipers hell-bent on envy and revenge and using the tiny fraction of people who are complaining to put forward their own brand of personal pathology and vindictiveness. And, well, I'll make everything public except for that which I can't do on legal grounds and let everybody decide for themselves. That's the plan. The regulatory boards that govern professional conduct in Canada, particularly in the US as well, and in the West more broadly, have become so corrupted by the woke ideology that the professionals you depend on in moments of crisis for legal advice and medical advice and psychological counseling, some of which can be life and reputation saving, they can no longer be trusted because they're being required by the professional bodies to lie to you in the service of this warped, radical leftist ideology that's now become, what would you call it, mandatory for right speakers wherever they might exist. And so that's why you might want to listen. The College of Psychologists is the regulatory board for the practice of psychology in Ontario. There are a variety of regulated professions: medicine, dentistry, teaching, architecture, psychology. That's not all of them. And these regulated professions have a board that's appointed by the government, whose mandate is to protect the public from unprofessional behavior on the part of the members of the regulated professions. And people can submit complaints to those bodies if they believe that they've been treated unprofessionally or unethically or otherwise inappropriately by a college member, so a member of the relevant profession. And the college has been after me non-stop with complaints since I rose to public prominence in 2016, although not once before that in the 20 years that I practiced as a clinical psychologist. So this isn't the university that's after me like it was in 2017, 2016. This is the College of Psychologists, which has started pursuing me in 2016 and has never let up. Now, what happens is that anyone anywhere can submit a complaint about me for anything I've done or said, hypothetical or otherwise. And then the college can, and that doesn't matter if they're a client of mine or ever have been, or if I've had any dealings with them, or even if they're the person who has hypothetically been harmed by my behavior. And the college has decided to pursue a sequence of such complaints, even though it's in their power to dismiss them as vexatious or frivolous, which is what I asked for, on the grounds that my social media communication has caused harm to people. And so they've essentially taken out what are the equivalent of more than a dozen lawsuits against me. And I say they're equivalent to lawsuits because the penalty for being found guilty of such misbehavior is quite serious. It can involve re-education, public apology, or even the removal of my ability to practice or to describe myself as a clinical psychologist. And of course, it took me about 10 years, all things considered, to get licensed. It's a very difficult process, and I'm not inclined to give it up lightly. In any case, they have been after me to a tremendous degree in 2022. I think there's 13 or 14 complaints, each of which culminated in one of these lawsuits. I'm represented by legal counsel. There's so many of them that they're difficult to keep track of. I probably went through 400 pages of documentation this week. And you asked me how I'm doing. Well, first of all, I found it extremely difficult to keep my rage under control, because a tremendous amount of my time is being wasted. It's extremely expensive. The allegations are not only utterly preposterous, but entirely political in nature. And then I was also afraid of it. The first complaint came in 2016 in December. At the same time the university was after me, and at the same time the Canadian Revenue authorities were after me for a mistake they admitted making 6 months later. They listed the fact that I criticized Justin Trudeau. Before I submit myself to this media training re-education, because I'm bound by the ethical standards of my profession, I'm not willing to go get educated unless there's evidence that the contents of the educational program are directly related to the practice of my profession, and that there's evidence that undertaking such re-education actually makes me a more competent therapist. Do you have any independent documentation that these experts that you have hired and foisted upon me have anything approximating genuine expertise? And do you have any evidence whatsoever that such training programs are effective? And of course, they said, we don't have to answer questions like that. And I asked them, I said, there's some evidence that I've done some good in the world. About 7 million people bought my first public book, and I have 15 million subscribers on the 3 main platforms we operate on social media. And lots of people seem to come to my lectures when I am out publicly speaking, saying that I've really helped them in their lives. And that's thousands or hundreds of thousands or possibly even millions of people. And so I think I can stack up a pretty good, plus all the students that I taught at Harvard and the University of Toronto, and all my clinical clients, who by and large were pretty damn happy to be working with me, and vice versa. It's like, how do you calculate the harm to benefit ratio? And what evidence do you have that I actually constitute a sufficient threat to the integrity of the profession that you're willing to bring the second harshest actions you have in your arsenal against me? And the answer to that was, we don't have to answer questions like that. And I had like 40 questions like that, none of which were answered. Their answer basically was, we can do whatever the hell we want. And we're telling you, you better go get re-educated, or you face a disciplinary hearing. That's the next step, is that I'd have to face a disciplinary hearing. And what I'm going to do for that, I do believe they videotaped that, and I'll take the videotape and put it on my YouTube channel, and people can decide for themselves, which is exactly what I want to have happen in this situation. Like, you and I talked about our strategy here. And I have been unbelievably angry about this. So it's been very hard for me to control my anger, and I know that's not right, and that my desire to seek vengeance is inappropriate, as is the desire in general to seek vengeance.